2 weeks ago, we told you about a line the Colorado River had never crossed, and we promised to track every foot of water on the way down. This is that update, and it is not the one anyone expected, because while the entire country was watching Lake Mead inch toward its record, the record fell somewhere else first. Upstream, quietly, Lake Powell, the second largest reservoir in America, has just dropped to the lowest level in its history. And when you add the two great reservoirs of the Colorado River together, the system is now holding less water than at any point since 1957. A year when the Glen Canyon Dam did not even exist yet. But the number that should really get your attention is not a water level at all. It is a purchase order. Because buried in a federal announcement this spring is a piece of engineering that quietly tells you what the government actually expects to happen to this river. Here is what just fell, what falls next, and what that purchase order reveals. Start upstream at Lake Powell. As of mid-July, Powell sits at about 3,524 feet above sea level, the lowest mark ever recorded since the reservoir first began filling behind the Glen Canyon Dam in the 1960s. This is not a projection anymore. It is on the gauges. And below the new record, the next line down is brutally close. At 3,490 feet sits what engineers call minimum power pool, the level where the water falls so low that it can no longer spin the Glen Canyon Dam's turbines at all. That is the dead power pool you may have heard about. Lake Powell is now roughly 34 feet above it. 34 feet at the bottom of a record-breaking summer in a year when the snowmelt that feeds this river collapsed by as much as 80%. The situation is already serious enough that Utah agreed to flush emergency water out of the Flaming Gorge Reservoir, hundreds of miles upstream, just to slow Powell's fall. That is the state of the upper river, a broken record, a thin cushion, and a system borrowing from its own savings to buy time. Now follow the water downstream because the second domino is 2 feet from falling. Lake Mead. In our last video, the largest reservoir in America stood about 4 feet above its all-time record low of roughly 1,040 feet, set in July of 2022. On Wednesday, the Bureau of Reclamation, the federal agency that operates these dams, released its newest report. The cushion is now less than 2 feet. Less than 2 feet in the third week of July, with the hottest stretch of the summer still ahead and the lake losing water every single day. The federal government's own projections have Mead matching its record this month and then falling straight through it, and they do not show it stopping there. The forecasts show the lake carving out new record lows again and again over the next 2 years, down toward 1,011 feet by 2028. 30 feet below, a record that stood as the worst moment in the reservoir's history. So, the question is no longer whether the line falls. It is what the people in charge are quietly preparing for. And that is where the purchase order comes in. On May 21st, the Bureau of Reclamation announced it will spend $52 million on 3 new turbines for the Hoover Dam. That sounds like routine maintenance until you read what makes these turbines special. They are wide-head turbines designed to keep generating electricity with far less water pressure than the originals. The old turbines start failing as the lake approaches 1,035 feet. Below that level, only 5 of the dam's 17 generators can keep running. The new ones are engineered to work all the way down to an elevation of 950 feet. Sit with that number for a moment. 950. That is 90 feet below the record that is about to break. government agencies do not spend $52 million preparing for scenarios they consider unlikely. Somebody ran the projections, looked at where this river is going, and signed off on machines built for a version of Lake Mead that almost no one is willing to say out loud. The turbines are not a repair. They are a confession. And the electricity math explains the urgency. Federal officials are already planning for the Hoover Dam's output to be cut by as much as 40% in a system whose hydropower feeds millions of people across the Southwest. The strain is real enough that Boulder City, the town that literally exists because it built the Hoover Dam, is now fighting a proposed data center over where its power should go. When the dam's own hometown starts rationing the future, you are watching the shortage arrive in real time, which brings us to the deepest number in this story. Combined, Lake Powell and Lake Mead are now holding about 12.67 million acre-feet of water. The last time the Colorado River system held this little, it was 1957. And the reason that comparison should stop you is that in 1957, the system was not even finished. The Glen Canyon Dam was still under construction. Lake Powell did not exist. America had not yet built the plumbing that made Phoenix, Las Vegas, and modern Los Angeles possible. In other words, the last time there was this little water banked in this river, 40 million people were not depending on it. The reservoirs were designed to hold roughly 4 years of the river's entire flow, a buffer big enough to ride out any drought the engineers of that era could imagine. That buffer is now mostly gone, and what remains is draining during what forecasters describe as the driest stretch in the basin's modern record. To be clear, and if you watched our last video, you know we do not exaggerate this, the system is not about to run dry. Dead pool at Lake Mead, the level where water stops passing the dam entirely, sits at 895 feet, still well over 100 feet down, and even the worst federal forecasts keep the lake above it for years. The honest danger is not a sudden stop. It is a slow ratchet. Record, cut, each turn a little harder to reverse. And the ratchet is turning at the exact moment no one is steering. Because none of what just happened has changed the political reality we covered 2 weeks ago. The rules that govern this river still expire at the end of December. The 7 states still have no deal. They blew past their federal deadline in February, even after Arizona offered to give up 27% of its share. And the Department of the Interior is still on schedule to impose its own plan by October 1st. Except now, the government that writes that plan is a government already buying turbines rated for 950 feet. Whatever arrives on October 1st will be written by people who have seen the same projections that purchase order was based on. Read into that what you will. So here is your updated watch list. 3 numbers closer together than they have ever been. 1. Lake Mead against 1,040 feet. The cushion is under 2 feet, and the crossing could come any day now. When it does, this reservoir will be lower than at any moment since it first filled in the 1930s. 2. Lake Powell against 3,490. The dead power pool. 34 feet of cushion, shrinking through the hottest weeks of the year. 3. October 1st, when Washington hands 7 states a plan that none of them wrote, for a river that keeps shrinking faster than the paperwork chasing it. Last time, we told you the line would fall. Now half of it has, and the other half is 2 feet away. We will be here when it goes, tracking every foot like we promised. If you want to see it happen, subscribe. And answer us this in the comments. Does your water or your electricity come from the Colorado River? And after everything you just heard, the missed deadlines, the emergency releases, the turbines built for 950 feet, who would you trust to run this river? The 7 states that could not agree, or the government that is quietly engineering for the worst? Because one of them is about to take the wheel.